On today's episode of PJ and the Beard, we're continuing on the ultimate field trip where I get the pleasure of coming to Nashville and the Beard is staying home getting information and video to put together to edit, but I am in Franklin, Tennessee at my good friend Brody's house in his, we're dubbing it the Guitar Oasis, but I have the pleasure of sitting here with my longtime friend Sal Oliveri of saloliveri.com. Producer here in Nashville. Sal, thank you for agreeing to be here. We plied you with red meat and wine, but you're here.
Yes.
So it works.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for being here. Mm-hmm. So one thing I want to talk to Sal about is his career here in Nashville and where he started, where he is now, maybe not in that order, but just kind of hear some things about coming up through the music business, some of the philosophies he has in doing that. So how long, maybe I'll start with how long you've been in Nashville.
I've been here a couple decades, which is hard to believe. Mm-hmm. Right out of college, moved down here and toured for a few years and then got into production. I mean, I was always dabbling in production from college days, but I started full-time after a few years of touring.
So right now, there's really exciting things. I think of your couple decades here, you're probably at the pinnacle, which is nice that you're in an upward trajectory, right?
Yeah, that's always great because you never know if it's going to plummet at some point.
It might look like stocks, right?
Right, yes.
But you're in it for the long haul. Mm-hmm. This is the career that you've decided to do. So maybe tell us some stuff you're working on currently. You've had some pretty big things happen recently.
Yeah, so most recently, I have a co-production on the newest Pink record. That's a duet actually with her and Chris Stapleton, who's a country artist who's really great. And so, I have production on that, playing credits, playing piano, bass, etc. And in the country world, I recently produced a song for a new artist named Jimmy Allen, who's really great. I've worked with Parmalee, did a single for them last year or the year before. And then I actually started working with former TV host Kathy Lee Gifford a couple years ago.
Maybe you've heard of her. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, she's been on TV for 40 years and is really just an incredible person. And she's just brought me into her world. Like I started working on one song for her that I produced. And I didn't know what her plans were. She sang it on her show, and with her reach, it went to #1 on iTunes immediately that day. And so everything we've done has had that kind of success. But she's really a prolific creator, so she's writing films and screenplays and short films we've worked on, songs with different people, and she's just basically told me that she just sends all of it to me, and so I can't really speak some of the names we've got coming up, but a lot of major artists across country, pop, and Christian music that will be releasing some music soon.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. We'll put in the links of all of Sal's social media, but it was just wild to watch over the last few months. She started talking about you on the show, and Brody, who's back there behind the camera, likes to joke that you're my Sal when she talks about you. Yeah. It's just unbelievable how this happened, and just what a great person she is, and the opportunities that you've had because of that. So we're a guitar-focused channel for the most part. So you're a keyboardist, phenomenal keyboard player, which, piano prayers.
Yes, right? That's right.
Well, that's another thing we'll talk about maybe, or put a link up to it. Kathy Lee. Well, just talk about it. I opened the bag. Let's talk about it.
Well, it's actually, I made a...
oh, look.
Oh, how nice. Yes.
Ta-da.
Piano prayers. So this is interesting because when I was playing piano growing up as a kid and went to college for music and, started realizing I wanted to do this as a profession, I always dreamed of making an instrumental record, but I never made it because I kept thinking, well, let me work on this, style or these licks or with my chops. And I always felt like there were people always would have better chops than I had. And so I never really made it because it was really in my youth, my focus was on impressing people, right? And I just felt like I never...
That's why we all play guitar, right?
Impress people, right. Yeah.
Ladies.
Yeah, the music store chops.
Yeah.
So I just never did it because I never really thought it would be meaningful in any way. And this actually came about, I'll just make it super quick. I have 4 children, and one of them, when she was very little, just could not sleep through the night without just being terrified. And we tried everything that parents do. You hug them, you go in the room, you walk them back, you pray for them, you do everything, and nothing was working. And I just got an idea of actually praying for her as I played the piano. And this is something I would do quite often, quite honestly. And I just recorded it and put it in a room, and the nightmare stopped. And so you fast forward a decade later, and I was sitting in my studio a couple of years ago, and just getting a sense, I just had that memory of what that did for my daughter, and I thought, I wonder if other people might appreciate that. So I did it not for business at all.
Right.
I thought maybe, 100 people might like it, and I made it just for the sake of doing it for other people. And that's when I started working with Kathy, actually, and she asked me one day while she was at the studio, "Hey, honey, what you working on these days?" And I told her about it and the reason. She said, "Oh, that's nice. I'd like to hear it when it's done." 3 months later, it's done. I send her a copy, and her assistant calls me while I'm on the treadmill at the gym that morning and says...
I never get a call on the treadmill in the gym, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, yeah. And she says, "Hey, if you get a chance, watch the show this morning." And I thought, sure, I'll watch it. And Kathy told 5 million people around the world about my little album, and I still get letters and emails and texts from people around the world saying how it's helping them, which is just amazing to me. So I never thought I'd have a Billboard whatever I got to number 2 or 3 or something, selling album as an artist. It's kind of funny to me because it wasn't in the plan at all. Yeah.
And I wanted to tell that story because it just gives an insight into Sal and who he is, and that's really important. That I'd like to feature that because we've been friends a long time and you're really a good friend. But back to guitars.
Yes, back to guitars.
So I think you've done pop. You're in Nashville, so you kind of have to do country. I think it's in the Constitution, probably.
Yes, it is.
So, and again, I started down this path of talking about that he is a keyboard player. So, you can bring in drums and bass on a computer. Sorry, Larry, who's helping run the camera. You can do that. But like guitar is kind of hard to copy.
Yes.
So
totally.
you have to forge relationships with guitarists.
Yes.
And so maybe over the years you can talk about how do you pick a guitar for a session, and maybe, I like to give permission to people to drop names so heavy you can't pick them up. So feel free to go anywhere you want to go with that about the guitarists you've worked with.
Well, I will say something about Nashville is that we are rich with talented people, really, really talented people, and amazing guitar players, really every instrument. Guitars here, guitarists are really specialized. I mean, a lot of guys are diverse in that they can cross genres, but we have the luxury, and I feel like I have a real luxury as a producer here to say, okay, I'm making a southern rock record or a country record. Let's just pick a genre, rock. Well, what kind of rock, and you might be lucky in another town to have 2 or 3 guys that play rock, but you might want modern rock versus classic rock versus whatever. And here you can get really specific and say, okay, out of these dozen guys that I rotate, they could all do it, but that guy lives and breathes it, and he has the angle that I'm really looking for. And I would say, I work with a lot of the names you would know. I've done a lot in the last few years with Jerry McPherson, who's played, tons of country and rock and pop and Christian records, and he's phenomenal. A young guy, Nathan Duggar, I've been working with a lot. He's got his own band that he's out with, and he's incredible. He's picked up the pedal steel. He's really a phenomenal musician. I think we were talking about Brent Mason coming up. We're going to do a session.
Cue picture of me and Brent Mason that I'll make Jason put up for the awkward stalking of Brent Mason.
So really, there are so many that are great, and it's like, for me, it's like a carpenter and tools. I really couldn't do what I set out to do without having all these talented musicians and these talented guitar players. That in most of the music, except for pop music, which is way more keyboard based, in all the other genres I work on, guitars play a huge role in the overall sound. And it's very important. And
not to get too deep in it because you're a keyboardist, but truth be told, we spent time over the last few days and kind of got talking a little bit about a Jerry McPherson and gear and what does he bring? So Sal's studio, which is, again, in the picture here, is not built to track drums, but there is a room where you could put an amp and dime it if you wanted to and sit in the control room and play. And you're looking for certain sounds, and these guys are really adept at what they do. You can give them a genre, you can give them maybe a reference of a band, and then they bring it up. So what kind of gear have you seen come into your studio, both digital and analog, and, to the best you can as a keyboard player?
Sure.
But you know what you like to hear.
I do. I would say really the best answer I can give, and I will get specific, is, and maybe this would speak to a guitarist that is watching your channel that's interested in how do I get into sessions and what do I need to master. This sounds maybe a little abstract, but it's having good taste. So, we've talked about, like, if you take two guitar players and they have their own rigs and you swap them, they'll eventually make the other person's rig sound like them, because it's what you're going for. It's what is in your head and you want to hear. So I don't worry too much about what they bring, because I know by hiring that person with that taste that if they come in with a Matchless or a Vox or a whatever, a Marshall, most times it's going to work. Like, sometimes I just think it would be an amateur mistake if they came in with the wrong gear. They know I have to cover a certain amount of bases, right? So you tend to see a lot of similar things, Fenders and Marshalls, and sometimes custom things, or, in a smaller overdub setting, usually it's 1 to 2 cabinets of choice, maybe just to have some different speakers. 1 to 2 heads, maybe, or they have a couple combos, and that could be an AC30 and then something different from it. And then, a palette on a pedal board of various colors. Acoustically, it's usually a few acoustics. Yeah. Maybe something warmer for country music, and then something brighter for pop. Banjo, ganjo. Honestly, what happens a lot of times, I'll text someone for a session, and they'll say, hey, what are we kind of working on? What do you think we need today?
Larry, get that special red guitar while he's talking back there.
And so, like, the other day or last week...
No, not that one. The really special red guitar. No, that one.
Nate came over. Oh.
No. Sorry. This was supposed to be subtle. That one, yeah, that's the one. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
So many special guitars.
Well, I know. We are in Guitar Oasis, which
Yes.
we will film an episode later this week. But
the other special one.
Yeah. So keep talking.
So, he asked me what we were going to be doing. And one day it was, we're just doing acoustic today. Don't even bother packing up a bunch of stuff. Then the next session was, hey, bring your pedal steel, acoustic and electric. And we're going to be working across 4 different clients that I'm doing. We're going to just do overdubs the whole day. So it just kind of depends. I tend to not worry so heavily about getting keeper guitars in a tracking session. I really want to get drums and bass, and I want the guitar player there for vibe, and to give the drummer to know how much to dig in by how he's hitting the guitar. And then if we get keeper guitars, great, but we're going to always go back to my place and then microscope and lay it down. So then they just bring a lot of colors. Usually it's more guitars than it is amps and speakers.
So, like, if you called for a session for country and somebody brought this,
yeah, that might be a mistake.
Would they be asked back?
Possibly not.
In your career, have you produced anything that would require this?
Never.
I didn't think so. Thank you, Larry.
No, I forgot.
You played in a band where
where somebody played that. Yes,
story.
But that's another lifetime ago.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to belabor this, because who knows how long this is going to be, and I don't care, because it's my channel and I can talk to my friend as long as I want to. But you talked about tracking drums, and we don't track drums here. Like I'm his partner. Yeah. You don't track drums here, so you're having this guitarist come to another studio that has a drum room, and you mic it up, and if you can keep some of those tracks, great, and if not, they come back. So, so it's an extra step, but it does give that guitarist another chance to hear the music and get the vibe, and you've already communicated phone, text, email, and things like that. So
exactly.
That's really cool. That's cool.
Yeah, it allows us to get more specific and make sure that everything, I care about all of it, but I'm very intense about the arrangement, and it's not that it needs to be sterile, but it can be chaos, but organized chaos. So everything has a place, and I just want to make sure that, also, I'm choosing not to mix over this last year because I've been too busy doing, too many different things, but being a mix engineer, I know how things are going to lay out in a mix, so I just want to make sure that we're recording things in a way that's not going to just be a mess later, because a lot of times people think more is more, and most times less is more.
No, that's great. So that was a lot to take in for guitar players, especially those who are listening that might want to be session players, which is a completely different animal. It's the clock is running, you've got to have the chops, you got to have the background, you got to be able to have the musical vocabulary.
Yeah.
We worked with a producer one time that had his iTunes up, and he would find this 8-second snippet of a song to play. I want it to sound like this, and half the guys in the room were like, I don't even know what band that is. So, musical vocabulary is important, kind of a depth in your genre. But so other things, I guess, you've also done a lot of work with some pretty significant songwriters in town through helping them maybe pitch songs and done a lot of artist development. Maybe you just touched, maybe briefly on some of those people, and here's another opportunity to name drop for our channel, not because they're people to him.
So as I was coming up, I worked for a lot of publishers here in Nashville who are the people that pitch the songs, and they hire the songwriters, to be staff writers. And so they would send me country songwriters, pop songwriters, mostly country because this town is predominantly has historically been country music. But these are hit songwriters, and they've become great friends through the years. So Tom Douglas and Alan Shamblin are my two longest friends and clients here in town. Together they wrote "The House That Built Me" for Miranda Lambert, which was Song of the Year, and went to the Grammys and the whole thing. And they wrote that over a 7-year period. And so I recorded all of their demos through those years and would produce them, and that would be what the artist would hear. And what that did for me as a producer was it helped me, one, to get used to working on incredible material, because they don't write bad songs. I mean, not all their songs get cut, but it's just because it's a numbers game and there's just too many songs being pumped into the system each week, that more so than get recorded. But Brett James has become a great friend. We did a film score together last year, and we have a jingle right now on the radio.
I saw a billboard for it. Tackle?
Yes,
Is it
Tackle, Takl. It's like the Uber of home repair. And
if you call, I won't show up. I assure you.
Yeah. So we wrote on that together, and so what was your? Sorry, you asked me the question.
I was just saying songwriters, and you've worked with artist development, and you've helped songwriters take these songs, give it their best chance for it to succeed as they're pitching to an artist or a producer.
That's right.
And like you said, that really helped you kind of hone your ability to do that, and probably make you be really intentional on arrangements and kind of be up to what is currently going on, but also maybe pushing it a little bit, maybe putting a little twist on it that might catch somebody's ear in this case.
Well, that's a great point, because in making demos is different than making a record, because in the demo you only have about a verse and maybe the chorus before they hit the next song. They don't listen to the whole song. If they love it, they might listen to the second verse, right? But on a record, you might save that interesting thing for the last chorus. You can't do that. You have to front load the song. And it doesn't mean that you jam pack everything in, but you have to make sure that everything's really interesting on the front end, because they're not going to get that far. The other thing it does is it makes you come up with good ideas fast, and that just takes time, really, of doing it a lot. So it would be 10 a.m., people show up, play me the song, I hear it once, I'm charting it, the chords out as I'm hearing it, I start building the track. By 6 p.m., it's mixed. So it's heard, arranged, produced, recorded, edited, mixed, done.
Right.
And you do that every day. And
meanwhile, in another studio, that's the kick drum EQ.
Right.
Right. For 5-6
hours.
hours.
But I did it for years, and I would do a couple hundred songs a year like that. And it's, sort of like the old wax on, wax off thing. You just get into a rhythm of knowing, oh, I've encountered this problem before, or I've encountered a song like this. And it's not formulas, but you just learn ways of accomplishing and getting to what you hear and realizing it faster. And that's part of being in the studio, is getting from idea to having it mapped out quickly.
That might be a sign.
Yes.
The computer actually timed out. So I guess before we go, one thing, and again, we will put links to all of Sal's social media, because in there you're kind of doling out advice, because you've worked with a lot of singer-songwriters, artist development, people trying to make it.
Yes.
That you kind of like tell them the things to focus on, and as Larry and Brody, we were talking over the last several days, that's sage advice for life, right? But it also could be very specific to guitar players as well. So I don't know which of the encyclopedia of wisdom that you have, that
Right.
you want to pluck one little gem out and maybe leave with that. That would apply to our guitar player
Yeah.
friends and frankly anyone who
Yeah.
might be watching this.
Well, one of the things that I generally talk to, what I address as new artists, which really just means people aspiring to have a full-time career in music. But it does apply to really anything or really anyone. But to guitar players, I would say the same thing that I would say to an artist, which is when you're young and you're building your vocabulary, like when we all learn to speak, you emulate first, right? But then once you've gathered words and you know how to string them together in a sentence, you begin to then speak your ideas, right? So you learn the mechanics first. So you learn off of records and you learn classic stuff, Jimmy Page, and then you learn modern stuff. And that's your vocabulary. But then the greatest thing you could do if you want to stand out in a crowd is be unique. And you know what the simplest way to do that is? Be you. Okay, you learn from others, and that's great. But then you say, well, now I have a hybrid of things. Like I have a little bit from here and a little bit from R&B and a little bit from rock and a little bit from pop. And then like a guy like Tom Morello, you just go, wow, he's so different than everybody. But I've watched him in interviews, and that's what he did. He just learned from a lot of teachers, and some of those teachers are records. And then he just said, here's my, hodgepodge of all of that. And so you've got to be good, you've got to be technically good and have a vocabulary. But then once you do that, be courageous and bold enough to just be different. And that will help you stand out in a crowd more than anything.
So again, like I said, that applies to more than just music and more specifically to guitar. But that is how my friend is wired, and that is why I wanted to share some time with him and share him with our audience. I think Sal is a great guy, and again, we'll put all the links of how to connect with him and check out his work and follow him on social media, and maybe see about maybe doing some work if you want to come down to. He has a studio in Brentwood, and it's a world-class studio. So I don't know if there's much else to say, because again, I could do this all day long, but maybe you want to join Sal in the fight. I think it's very important that, as an Italian, he feels like he's been breaking the law his entire life, but he is really in the fight to legalize marinara.
Yeah.
Or gravy. I don't know. What do you call it?
Marinara's good for me.
Yeah, marinara. Yeah, whatever. Larry's Italian back there, too, and he's giving me the eyeball. So with that, I'm PJ on behalf of the Beard, who is in absentia. Look it up. Reminding you, even in this guitar oasis, that no matter what you hear, you never have too much gear. And Brody, I need your help, because I usually go out with some big distorted guitar, but I have a fever that can only be cured by one thing. Peace out from Franklin.